This is comfortable, just right.
My name is Richard Malone. I'm 72 years old, and I've been married to my wife, Catherine, for 38 years. That's almost 4 decades of sharing a home, raising children, building what I thought was a good life together. And for most of those years, I believed I understood my marriage. I believed I knew my wife. I was wrong. 3 years ago, a stranger said 6 words to me. Just 6. They weren't spoken in anger. They weren't meant as an accusation. But those words broke something open inside me that I didn't even know was sealed shut. They forced me to see my marriage, my wife, and myself in a way I'd been avoiding for longer than I care to admit. If you're in a relationship right now, whether it's been 6 months or 60 years, I need you to hear what I'm about to tell you, because what that stranger saw in a single moment took me decades to understand, and by then I'd almost lost everything. For 38 years, I told myself we had a good marriage, and by most standards we did. I was faithful. I provided for my family. I showed up to every school play, every graduation, every holiday dinner. I never raised my hand to Catherine, never disappeared on weekends, never gave her reason to doubt where I was or who I was with. By every measure, I understood I was a good husband. We raised 3 children together. We paid off the house. We retired with enough savings to live comfortably. From the outside, we were the couple people admired, stable, solid, still together after all these years when so many others had fallen apart. But here's what I didn't see. Somewhere along the way, Catherine developed her own life. She had her book club on Tuesdays, her garden in the backyard, her morning routine that didn't include me, and I had mine. I watched the news in the living room while she ate breakfast alone in the kitchen. I read in my study while she walked the neighborhood by herself. We moved through the same house on parallel tracks that rarely intersected. I didn't notice because nothing felt wrong. There were no arguments, no cold silences, no slammed doors. We were polite, we were comfortable, and I mistook that comfort for connection. I mistook her silence for contentment. She never complained, so I assumed she was happy. I assumed we were fine, better than fine. This is just what long marriages look like, I told myself. The passion fades. You settle into routine. You become roommates who share a history. I had no idea how dangerous that assumption would turn out to be. It happened 3 years ago at a funeral. An old colleague of mine had passed, a man I hadn't spoken to in years but felt obligated to pay respects to. Catherine came with me, as she always did for these things. She was gracious, composed, moving through the reception with the quiet ease she'd perfected over decades of social functions I'd dragged her to. I was standing by the coffee table when a woman approached me. She was perhaps 60, someone I didn't recognize. She introduced herself as a friend of Catherine's from the community garden. They'd worked together on some volunteer committee I vaguely remembered Catherine mentioning once or twice. I nodded politely, half listening, waiting for the conversation to end so I could refill my cup. And then she said it, casually, almost as an afterthought. She glanced across the room at Catherine, who was standing alone by the window, and said, "Your wife seems so lonely sometimes." 6 words, spoken without malice, without accusation, just an observation from someone who had no reason to lie to me. I laughed, actually laughed. "Lonely?" I said. "We've been married 38 years. She's not lonely." The woman didn't argue. She just looked at me with something I couldn't quite identify at the time. Pity, maybe, or recognition. Like she'd seen this before and already knew how the conversation would end. She smiled politely, excused herself, and walked away. I forgot about it. Or I tried to. I told myself she didn't know what she was talking about. How could a stranger understand my marriage better than I did? Catherine and I had built a life together. We shared a home, a history, children, grandchildren. Lonely was what single people felt. Lonely was what happened when you were alone. And Catherine was never alone. I was always right there. But that night, lying in bed, those 6 words crept back. Your wife seems so lonely sometimes. I stared at the ceiling and tried to dismiss them. But they wouldn't leave. They sat in my chest like a stone I couldn't swallow. And for the first time in years, I turned to look at Catherine sleeping beside me and wondered if I'd ever really seen her at all. In the days that followed, I started watching Catherine differently. Not obviously, not in a way she would notice, but I began paying attention to things I had ignored for years. And what I saw made me sick to my stomach. I noticed that she always ate breakfast alone. Every single morning, she would sit at the kitchen table with her toast and her book, while I watched the news in the living room. 2 rooms apart, 2 separate worlds. I couldn't remember the last time we'd shared a meal in the morning. 10 years? 15? I genuinely didn't know. I noticed that she never asked me to go on walks with her anymore. She used to. Years ago, she'd invite me to walk around the neighborhood after dinner. I always had a reason not to. Tired from work, bad knee, game on television. Eventually, she stopped asking. I thought she'd simply lost interest in walking. Now I realized she'd lost faith that I would ever say yes. Then I found the sheet music. I was looking for something in the hall closet when I came across a folder tucked behind old photo albums. Inside were beginner piano books, pages yellowed with age, untouched. I remembered Catherine mentioning once, maybe 15 years ago, that she'd always wanted to learn piano. I remembered dismissing it. Too expensive, impractical. Where would we even put a piano? She never brought it up again. She had carried that dream in silence. She had hidden it in a closet where I would never look. And she had let it die there because I made her feel foolish for wanting it. The loneliness the stranger described wasn't sudden. It wasn't caused by a single event or a dramatic failure. It was built slowly, carefully, one small refusal at a time. Every "not tonight" I ever said, every invitation I declined, every dream I dismissed as impractical, they accumulated like sediment, layer after layer, until Catherine was buried beneath the weight of everything I wouldn't give her. She stopped asking me to join her for walks. She stopped suggesting we try new things together. She stopped sharing her dreams. She stopped. And I never noticed because her silence was convenient. Her independence meant I didn't have to try. I told myself she was happy with her own routines, her own hobbies, her own life. But the truth was simpler and more damning. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't abusive. I was just absent. I was in the house every single day, and I was nowhere at all. I couldn't carry it alone anymore. The weight of what I was seeing, what I had missed for so long, became unbearable. One evening after dinner, I found Catherine in the kitchen washing dishes. I stood in the doorway watching her for a moment. This woman I had lived beside for nearly 4 decades, and I asked her the question I was terrified to hear answered. "Catherine, are you lonely?" She didn't turn around. Her hands stopped moving in the water. The silence stretched between us like something physical, something I could almost touch. And then her shoulders began to shake, not dramatically, not loudly, just a quiet trembling that broke me more than any scream ever could. When she finally turned to face me, there were tears on her cheeks, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of release, the tears of someone who had waited years to be seen and had finally been asked the question that mattered. She told me things that night that I had never known. She told me she had felt invisible for years, that she had learned to stop expecting anything from me because disappointment was worse than emptiness. She told me that after the kids moved out, she had seriously considered leaving. She had imagined a life alone and realized it wouldn't feel much different from the life she was already living. But the words that destroyed me, the ones I will carry until the day I die, came when I asked her why she never pushed harder, why she never insisted, why she let her dreams go silent instead of fighting for them. She looked at me with those tired, patient eyes and said, "I stopped asking because your no hurt more than being alone." I nearly lost my wife that night, not to another man, not to some dramatic betrayal. I nearly lost her to my own indifference, to the slow, invisible erosion of 1,000 small neglects. She had stayed all those years not because she was happy, but because she remembered the man I used to be, and she kept hoping, quietly, desperately, that someday he might come back. If you're watching this, I need you to hear something. Really hear it. Not as background noise while you scroll through your phone, not as entertainment to pass the time. I need you to let these words land somewhere deep enough to matter. You can be present without being connected. You can share a home with someone for decades and still leave them utterly alone. You can convince yourself that you're a good partner because you haven't done anything wrong, while slowly destroying your relationship through everything you haven't done right. Indifference doesn't announce itself. It doesn't slam doors or raise its voice. It creeps in quietly, one declined invitation at a time, one dismissed dream at a time, until the person you love stops reaching for you altogether. And the tragedy is that you won't notice. You'll mistake their silence for peace. You'll mistake their independence for happiness. You'll mistake comfort for connection. A stranger saw my wife's loneliness in a single glance. It took me 38 years to see what she saw in a moment. That should terrify you. It should terrify you because right now someone might be seeing the truth about your relationship that you're completely blind to. So I want you to ask yourself some questions. When is the last time your partner asked you to do something and you said no? When is the last time they suggested something new, something that mattered to them, and you dismissed it? When did they stop asking? Do you even remember? Do you know what your partner dreams about? Do you know what keeps them awake at night? Do you know who they are becoming or only who they used to be? Being a good partner isn't about avoiding betrayal. It's not about simply showing up. It's about actively choosing connection every single day. It's about saying yes when it's easier to say no. It's about caring for the things they care about because they matter to the person you love. You might not get a stranger to wake you up the way I did. You might not get a second chance. Don't wait until someone else has to tell you what you should already know. Ask tonight. Look tonight. Listen tonight. That conversation in the kitchen didn't fix everything. You don't erase decades of neglect with a single apology, but it was a beginning, the first honest beginning we'd had in years. We started walking together again, every evening, after dinner, around the neighborhood, like we used to before I became too tired, too busy, too comfortable to bother. I started sitting with her at breakfast. No television, no distractions, just coffee and conversation and the slow work of learning who she had become while I wasn't paying attention. And I bought her a piano, a small upright that sits in the corner of the living room. She's learning to play at 70 years old. She's terrible at it, honestly. But sometimes I sit nearby and watch her practice, her fingers fumbling over keys, laughing at her own mistakes. And I realize that laugh almost disappeared forever because I couldn't be bothered to say yes. A stranger told me my wife was lonely. He was right. But those 6 words also saved my marriage. They woke me up just in time. Love the person you're with. Not tomorrow, not when things calm down. Today, while you still can.